So a couple of weeks ago, Roland announced their new Roland SPD-SX Pro sampling pad. Now, I've played a Roland TD20 for the last 15 years, and I've toured all over the world for the past 10 years with either a Roland SPD-S or a Roland SPD-SX. So let's see if it's worth it for us to upgrade from the Roland SPD-SX to the Roland SPD-SX Pro. So new on the Roland SPD-SX Pro, there is a large upgraded color display as well as a bunch of job dials, and the buttons are now backlit. So this is nothing major, but it's a good upgrade. The new Roland SPD-SX Pro has the top 3 pads now have a revised sensor remodel, which means they should be more playable, which is a good upgrade because I always noticed on the Roland SPD-SX, you had to strike them harder for them to trigger sometimes. And that was really annoying on certain gigs when, I'd either get a misfire or I would try to advance to the next kit and it wouldn't do it. The new Roland SPD-SX Pro now comes with 8 inputs for external triggers, which expands your capability for hybrid setups, as well as using it as an acoustic alternative or a low volume stripped down set alternative. There's now added functionality for hi-hat with expression pedal, which means you can use a pedal to control hi-hat on the new Roland SPD-SX Pro. This is huge. This means you have expanded functionality for gigs where you're using just the SPD-SX Pro. As well, now the SPD-SX Pro is maybe a viable option for quiet, kind of silent practice in your apartment or living situation where the kids are already in bed and you want to practice. Now, many people over the years have asked me why my SPD-SX has orange gaff tape on it. And it's because when you're playing a show on a totally blacked out stage, it can be almost impossible to see the Roland SPD-SX. And with the new version, the Roland SPD-SX Pro, they've gone ahead and added lights that will help you on a blacked out stage be able to see your new pad, which is a really, really nice feature. Although personally for me, that gaff has kind of done the trick. So this wasn't something that I was like, man, it's gotta have this, but it's a really nice feature and I'm glad they included it. One of the huge things that I was looking for is file format and functionality. And on the new Roland SPD-SX Pro, it takes a 48 kilohertz 16-bit sample. And unlike previous versions of the pad, you now have the ability to load that on and apparently it will auto-convert that file as it's going onto the pad, which that is a huge benefit of the new pad. The new Roland SPD-SX Pro also has 32 gigs of memory, which is probably more than you'll need for any 1 gig, but it does help you if you have several different cover bands where your sets are 2 or 3 or 4 hours long. And this kind of covers you for all of those sets being loaded onto your SPD-SX Pro always. The SPD-SX Pro also comes with 1,500 or more samples preloaded onto the unit, as well as you can add more with the Roland Cloud. Now you might be asking yourself, 1,500 samples is insane. I think the SPD-SX only came with a little over 200 samples. So you're getting a lot of samples with this new pad. But if I've learned anything from using a bunch of Roland products over the years, the TD20, the SPD-S, the SPD-SX, it's that, all of the samples included in these releases, usually there's 20% of them that are a 3 out of 5 on the usefulness scale. So it's not like every single sample that they release with the unit that comes preloaded is going to be useful to you. So you might be thinking, well, okay, I might not get 1,500 useful samples. I'll just use the Roland Cloud access to get more. But this Roland Cloud, I'll be honest, seems kind of like Roland's version of Splice. And I was on their website and I was trying to get a handle on what was going on there, and it was really hard to use. And I just think at this point, if you're trying to get samples for cheap or for free, there are a lot of better options than trying to use Roland's kind of whatever they've got going on with Roland Cloud. The setlist functionality. I am a huge proponent of using setlists on the Roland SPD-SX. So the new expanded functionality on the Pro is really, really awesome. They've got way more set lists that you can save, way more ways, and it seems to be easier to change your set list out. That's a really nice feature. I don't think it's a game changer, but it's good they included it. As far as outputs, you get 1 stereo output, so 1 left-right output, and then 4 other mono outputs, which this is really, really nice. And it seems like they've kind of streamlined and made it less confusing to get more outputs on the SPD-SX Pro, which would be really useful for people that want to do things like run backing tracks off the Roland as well as run, triggered samples at the same time as backing tracks off the unit. Now let's talk about the software. We all know that the old Roland software for the SPD-SX was really bad. Most people use a third-party software because the Roland software was so bad. And it seems like the new software, it has the cool dark UI that like Logic and Pro Tools now all have. But other than that, I didn't really see anything that jumped out as like, oh, they finally figured it out. To me, it seems like since the old Roland software was so bad and that the new Roland pad has so many more features, settings, things that you can tweak, it really just seems to me, I won't know this until I can either hands-on use the Roland software or see someone in depth kind of go through and try to load up stuff on the new Roland software. But it seems to me with all the added features that the new pad has and with how bad the old software was, I'm not really gonna bet any amount of money that the new software works any better than the old did. And if you are thinking about upgrading, keep in mind, if the software that they just released doesn't work as well as you'd want it to, there won't be third-party alternatives like there are right now for the SPD-SX. So just keep in mind that if you upgrade to the new pad, you'll be forced to use Roland software no matter how good it is for some amount of time. The control panel on the unit now has knobs that can change the pad volume and change the pitch control on whatever sample you're using, as well as there's an onboard transient designer. And these things are really nice features that I'm glad they added. Personally, for me, I would try to get any kind of transient designing or pitch or that kind of stuff. I would try to iron that out before I actually loaded the sample onto the SPD-SX Pro. But if you're in a pinch and you really need to make a tweak to the sample, you don't have to wait until you get to a computer and do it and then reload it. You can kind of just do it right there, which is nice. The pad link function on the new Roland SPD-SX Pro has way expanded its functionality. This is a really good thing. You can pretty much link any pad to any other pad from the way I understand it, and that's really, really cool, especially if you're using the Roland to run backing tracks, because now it gives you added flexibility. The onboard click to the Roland SPD-SX Pro now has some expanded functionality as well. You can load up your own samples to use as the click track, and this is something that doesn't blow my mind, but I guess it's kind of cool if they added it. So my big takeaway is that overall, it does seem like Roland took into account all the gripes and problems people had with the SPD-S and the SPD-SX, and they've tried to fix them with the Roland SPD-SX Pro. But if you're thinking about upgrading or buying the SPD-SX Pro, here are a few things to keep in mind. One, the Pro version, the new version of this pad, is now $400 more than the SPD-SX. I've seen the SPD-SX sell as low as $650 or even $550. So you might be paying anywhere from $400 to $700 more for the Pro version of this pad. As well, the new SPD-SX Pro has a new processor, new pad builds, lots of new buttons, lights, and knobs. With every little new feature and electronic they add, they increase the ability for this pad to fail. The SPD-SX, I've toured with it for years. It was built really kind of road-worthy, and we just really won't know how road-worthy, with all the new features and knobs and buttons and lights and all that stuff, we won't know how road-worthy the SPD-SX Pro is until people get out on the road for 6 months or 2 years and kind of put it to the test. So my personal takeaway, should you upgrade? Personally, if you already own an SPD-SX, I wouldn't upgrade. I'm not gonna upgrade. I just personally don't think you're getting enough of a difference to justify spending another $1,200. So personally for me, I'm gonna wait a few years, see how these things fare on the road, get road tested, and then maybe I'll consider upgrading.